Hey everyone, welcome back to the Checkered Sky channel where we dive into true crime stories. Today, we're stepping into a case that shook a small town in England. A story of a young woman whose life was cut short in a place she thought was safe. This is the story of Ellen Higginbottom, an 18-year-old whose disappearance in Wigan turned a peaceful summer day into a chilling true crime mystery. It's June 16, 2017, in Wigan, a quiet borough in Greater Manchester. The sun is shining, and Orrell Water Park is alive with dog walkers, joggers, and families enjoying the warm afternoon. This nature reserve, with its winding paths and tranquil lake, feels like a haven, a place where nothing bad could ever happen. But on this day, something unthinkable did. Ellen Higginbottom, a bright, ambitious psychology student at Winstanley College, walked through this park after a morning of revising for her A-levels. But she never made it home. At around 1:43 p.m., Ellen sent a playful Snapchat to her friends. "Been in the park for 20 minutes, and I'm already lost," she joked, her message laced with her trademark wit. Her friends laughed it off. Ellen was always up for a joke. But as the hours ticked by, that message became the last anyone would hear from her. By 7:20 p.m., her family grew worried. Ellen wasn't the type to vanish without a word. Her disappearance was so out of character that her father, Mike, called the police. Something was wrong, very wrong. The police sprang into action, launching a search that would soon grip the entire community. Officers combed the streets near Winstanley College, interviewed classmates, and checked Ellen's social media for clues. But as the night deepened, the search zeroed in on Orrell Water Park, the last place Ellen was known to be. The answers were out there, hidden in the shadows of that sunny afternoon, and the police were determined to find them.
Police!
To understand the depth of this loss, we need to know who Ellen was. She was born in 1998 in Boothstown, a close-knit suburb of Salford, just a short drive from Wigan. Raised by her parents, Mike and Kay, she grew up in a home filled with love and encouragement. Ellen was the kind of daughter who made her family proud every day, not just for her achievements, but for her heart. She was a talented musician. She enjoyed listening to and performing music, and she also had a notable love of equestrian and horses. Animals were Ellen's passion. From a young age, she dreamed of becoming a veterinarian, a goal that drove her to excel in her studies. This love for creatures big and small wasn't just a hobby, it was a calling. Ellen was studying psychology at Winstanley College, but her long-term plan was to blend her interest in animal behavior with her academic pursuits. Ellen's heart also belonged to Ryan Warren, her boyfriend of 2 years. Ryan described her as his nugget, a nickname that captured her quirky, endearing nature. They shared big dreams, traveling the world, building a home, starting a family. Ellen wasn't perfect. She'd joke about getting lost in parks or forgetting her lines in school plays, but those quirks only made her more beloved. On that fateful June day in 2017, Ellen was just being herself, walking through Orrell Water Park, likely lost in her thoughts or a favorite song. She'd been revising for her A-levels, preparing for a future that seemed so close. But as police began their search, they turned to those who knew her best, hoping to piece together her final hours. Did Ellen cross paths with someone unexpectedly? Was there a clue in her daily routine? The answers lay somewhere in the park, and investigators were about to uncover a trail that would lead them closer to the truth. Let's follow the investigation as it unfolds, step by step, in this chilling true crime puzzle. By 7:20 p.m. on Friday, June 16th, Ellen's father, Mike Higginbottom, contacted Greater Manchester Police, his voice heavy with concern. Ellen hadn't come home from Winstanley College, and her silence was unlike her. Friends confirmed she'd been in Orrell Water Park earlier that afternoon. Her playful Snapchat at 1:43 p.m. marking her last known communication. The police classified her disappearance as extremely out of character, a red flag that prompted immediate action. Orrell Water Park, a 70-acre nature reserve, is a maze of trails, lakes, and wooded areas, popular with locals for its peaceful beauty. But as night fell, its sprawling terrain became a challenge. Police focused on the park based on Ellen's Snapchat and her friends' reports that she'd been walking there after leaving college around 1 p.m. Meanwhile, Ellen's friends took to social media, posting desperate pleas for information. Her father's second call to police, seeking an update, pushed the case higher on the priority list. By midnight, a full-scale search was underway, with ground teams and a police helicopter equipped with heat-seeking technology scouring the park. The helicopter's presence would later prove critical, but not in the way anyone expected. As the helicopter scans the ground below, suddenly, something shows up. The helicopter discovered a heat source. It was in a farmer's field adjacent to a water park and some marshland. The police helicopter, it picked up a heat source of a person that was running away. Could this be Ellen? Had she become lost or hurt herself? The helicopter crew direct the officers towards the heat source. The search team move into the crop field and they quickly make a shocking find. There, hidden among tall grass, was Ellen's body. She was lying near a hedge, partially dressed, her lower back and legs exposed, suggesting a hurried or interrupted act. The cause of Ellen's death was two quite dreadful, very deep wounds in particular to her neck, either one of which would have been sufficient to kill her. The severity of the injuries pointed to a sustained attack, with additional marks on her arm hinting she may have tried to defend herself. The investigation, led by Detective Superintendent Howard Millington, was a high-stakes puzzle. The wheat field where Ellen was found offered chilling clues: a spade, a leather belt, and signs of a premeditated attack. But her backpack, cell phone, and laptop are missing. Police knew they were dealing with someone deliberate, someone who might have planned this for hours or longer. The first task was to reconstruct Ellen's final hours. She'd left Winstanley College around 1 p.m. on June 16th, heading into Orrell Water Park. Her Snapchat at 1:43 p.m. confirmed she was there, but what happened in the next 20 minutes, when police estimated the attack occurred around 2 p.m., was a blank. The wheat field, just yards from Winstanley College, was an isolated spot, shielded from the park's main paths by dense vegetation. It wasn't a place Ellen would have wandered to casually. It suggested she'd been lured or forced there. Police cordoned off a large section of the park, setting up a forensic tent to preserve the scene. As dawn broke, news of the discovery spread, and residents began leaving flowers at the park's entrance. Investigators turned their attention to the park's visitors that day. They appealed for witnesses, asking about anyone acting suspiciously on Friday or in the days prior. Detective Howard Millington, leading the case, noted an earlier report of two women being followed in the park on Thursday, June 15th. Was it connected? The possibility of a sexual motive wasn't ruled out, given the state of Ellen's clothing and the nature of the attack. The community's response was overwhelming. Winstanley College issued a statement urging students to avoid walking alone near the park. Detectives fanned out across Wigan, knocking on doors and speaking to anyone who might have crossed paths with Ellen. They started with her inner circle. Her boyfriend, Ryan Warren, was questioned early on, not as a suspect, but to build a picture of her life. Ryan was cooperative, sharing texts and memories of their plans to marry. Friends like Chloe Williams described Ellen as cautious, not the type to wander off with a stranger. Her parents, Mike and Kay, confirmed she had no enemies, no conflicts. Ellen was the girl who'd rather save a spider than squash it, Kay said, a detail that painted her as gentle, unassuming. These interviews ruled out personal motives, pointing to a stranger attack, a rare and terrifying prospect. The sad fact is that most people who are victims of homicide are actually killed by somebody who's known to them. The park itself became the next focus. Police issued urgent appeals, asking for anyone who'd been there between noon and 3 p.m. to come forward. "If you saw anything, even something small, we need to know," Detective Millington said in a press conference. One witness, a retiree walking his spaniel, recalled seeing a man lingering near the wheat field around 1:30 p.m. A critical break came from the police helicopter that had been deployed during the search. Equipped with heat-seeking technology, it had spotted a figure fleeing the wheat field area around 2 a.m., just before Ellen's body was found. The helicopter guided ground officers to the spot, and while the figure vanished into the night, the timing was suspicious. Had someone returned to the scene? Police theorized the perpetrator might have come back to move or conceal evidence, only to be scared off by the chopper. This led to a forensic sweep of the field, where DNA on the belt and spade became a goldmine. The items didn't belong to Ellen, and the DNA didn't match anyone in her circle. It was a stranger's trace, and it was fresh. The marks around Ellen's ankles also appear to suggest the belt was used to drag her from the attack site to the field where her body was found. Faced with new evidence, the police appealed to the community for information, sharing details about Ellen's missing belongings. The strategy succeeded, and a concerned local contacted them. This led investigators to a nearby woodland area where a fire had been burning. At the site, among the embers of the dying fire, police found some of Ellen's possessions, including her laptop and keys. They quickly determined this was a poorly executed attempt to destroy evidence and hide the fact that the items had been in someone's possession. Following the discovery of Ellen's missing belongings, burnt out in woodland in nearby Billinge, the police make a breakthrough. On Sunday, June 18th, the first arrest came. A 47-year-old man from Billinge, a Wigan suburb near the park. His name was David Steele, and he lived on Oakley Avenue, close enough to walk to the crime scene. Witnesses identified him trying to set fire to items in the woods. Steele was known locally, with a minor criminal record for theft. Neighbors described him as quiet but odd, often seen walking alone at night. Police searched his home, seizing clothes and electronics, but Steele denied any involvement, claiming he'd been at home all day Friday. Police made 2 additional arrests in and around the Orrell area. David Steele was charged with handling stolen goods and obstructing justice, along with Dean Speakman and Vicky Calland, both 30, from Cobmore Avenue, Billinge. Who are these 3 suspects, and how are they connected to Ellen's death? As police investigate further, they have found no forensic evidence linking the trio to the murder scene. The suspects possessed Ellen's stolen laptop and cell phone and attempted to burn them, despite knowing the items were tied to the murder. How did they obtain the laptop and cell phone? We'll talk about that next. Police received the results of DNA testing from the belt, which changed the course of the investigation. A man's belt that was near Ellen had both Ellen's DNA and also matched that of a man. It matched a man called Mark Buckley. A 51-year-old man, Mark Stephen Buckley, was detained at his home on Newhall Lane in Preston, 20 miles from Wigan. Buckley had ties to Billinge. His mother lived on a housing estate next to the park, but he'd been relocated to Preston after a 2016 arson conviction for setting a neighbor's car on fire.
There's the property, which is here, so we'll do that at some stage. We're going to take it back to Greta Manchester now for questioning and to continue our inquiries. Right.
When they searched Buckley's flat, they found a bag containing rope, a ligature, an empty condom packet, and lubricant, items that painted a chilling picture of intent. The DNA on the belt and spade? A match for Buckley. Buckley's arrest was a turning point, but police kept their cards close. In custody, he was evasive, admitting he'd been in the park, but claiming he found Ellen's belongings. His criminal history, arson, affray, and minor offenses from the 1990s, showed no violent attacks, which puzzled investigators. Senior investigating officer Bob Tong later reflected, "His record didn't scream this kind of crime, but the evidence did. The contents of the bag suggested a planned attack. "He was out to get somebody that day," Tong said. To build the case, police revisited witnesses. A dog walker confirmed seeing a man matching Buckley's description, stocky, shaved head, carrying a bag, near the park's entrance around noon. Another reported an unsettling encounter. A man had approached her on Thursday, June 15th, asking if she walked alone often. She'd brushed it off but gave police a description that aligned with Buckley. These accounts suggested he'd been in the park for days, watching, waiting. Despite forensic evidence against him, Mark Buckley denied any involvement in Ellen's murder. However, police uncovered CCTV footage that showed Buckley heading toward Orrell Water Park just after 1 p.m. They tracked some of his movements, which revealed that he left his house early that morning when it was very warm. He wore a thick coat, long pants, and carried a green shopping bag. Later, footage from the same camera showed Buckley returning shortly afterward. When he returned, the bag appeared full. He was no longer wearing his coat, only a tank top and shorts. Despite being confronted with the video evidence, Buckley continued to deny any involvement in Ellen's murder. However, other suspects in custody began to talk. They not only confirmed they were friends with Buckley, but also explained how they came to possess Ellen's belongings. It emerged that Mark Buckley had visited the three offenders. He had given them a backpack containing items, including a laptop and keys, stolen from Ellen. He had also sold her cell phone to one of them. Police also found footage of him returning to the park late Friday night, possibly to move Ellen's body, a plan thwarted by the helicopter. This matched the court's later findings that Buckley intended to bury her under cover of darkness. The footage, combined with DNA and the recovered items, was damning, but police needed to rule out accomplices. The forensic case against Buckley grew stronger. Blood on his clothes matched Ellen's DNA, and fibers from the rope in his bag were found on her body. Police ruled out a connection between Buckley and Ellen. No texts, no social media, no mutual acquaintances. Absolutely no evidence linked them, Tong noted, confirming the attack's random nature. But why Ellen? Investigators learned Buckley had spoken to other women in the park that day, none of whom reported harm. If it wasn't her, it would have been somebody else, Tong said, a chilling insight into Buckley's mindset. By June 20th, Buckley was charged with murder and remanded to appear at Wigan Magistrates Court. The other suspects faded from focus. Steele, Speakman, and Calland faced lesser charges. The investigation zeroed in on Buckley, but questions lingered. Why had he chosen that day? What drove a man with no violent history to such an act? As police prepared for trial, they visited Buckley in prison, hoping for answers. "He's got an incredible loss of memory when it comes to the finer details," Tong said, frustrated. With mounting evidence against him, Mark Buckley finally confessed. He admitted that he killed Ellen, stating he greeted her before dragging her off the path. He quickly expressed remorse for the killing, but consistently denied any sexual activity or motivation behind his crime. As Mark Buckley's trial loomed, Ellen Higginbottom's family and the Wigan community braced for answers that might never come. The 51-year-old's arrest, backed by damning evidence, DNA, stolen belongings, and CCTV, had painted a grim picture of a random, predatory act in Orrell Water Park on June 16, 2017. Ryan Warren, Ellen's boyfriend, posted online, "I'll never understand why her, why us." Her family asked people not to label the suspects as animals. They said, "Ellen loved animals, and the psychology student in her would tell you it takes the complexity of a human mind to conjure such exquisite evil." The trial of Mark Stephen Buckley began at Manchester Crown Court in September 2017. The guilty plea spared Ellen's family the ordeal of reliving the crime in detail, but it also meant Buckley's motives remained largely unspoken, leaving a void where explanations were desperately needed. The prosecution, led by Peter Wright and Neil Fryman, presented a case rooted in chilling evidence. They argued Buckley's attack was premeditated and sexually motivated. "He was out to get somebody that day," Fryman had said, emphasizing Buckley's 9 hours in the park, prowling for a lone female. The court heard how Buckley, armed with a substantial knife, likely a kitchen knife, targeted Ellen at random around 2 p.m., dragging her into bushes off a path. He inflicted multiple neck wounds and strangled her, a savage and brutal act, as Judge Stockdale later described. The prosecution highlighted the rope, ligature, and lubricant found in Buckley's bag, suggesting he intended a sexual assault, though no such assault was completed, likely due to his flight when disturbed. They also noted his attempt to bury Ellen's body, a tactical move, not genuine remorse. On September 14, 2017, Judge Stockdale sentenced Buckley to life imprisonment with a minimum term of 30 years and 280 days, meaning he'd be 82 before parole could be considered. "You subjected her to a savage and brutal attack," the judge told Buckley, who showed no emotion. "It was as cowardly and callous as it was brutal. She would have had no idea it was coming." The judge highlighted Ellen's slight build and her futile attempt to defend herself, noting wounds on her wrist. He affirmed the attack's sexual motivation, citing Buckley's bag of items, and condemned his plan to bury her, calling the case, frankly, chilling. After pleading guilty to obstructing justice, 47-year-old David Steele received a 2-year suspended sentence and was ordered to perform unpaid work. Vicky Calland and Dean Speakman destroyed Ellen Higginbottom's belongings after learning of her murder. Both wept in court as they were sentenced for handling stolen goods and obstructing justice. Speakman was sentenced to 20 months in jail, while Calland, a mother of 4, received a 16-month suspended sentence. Initially unaware that the items belonged to a murder victim, they believed Buckley's claim that he had stolen them from a girl sitting on a park bench. However, upon learning of Ellen's death and realizing the items belonged to her, they panicked and burned the items to cover their tracks, a court heard. Speakman even returned to the scene the next day to ensure the fire had destroyed Ellen's laptop. Their attorneys reported that Speakman had faced serious threats in prison, requiring protective custody, while Calland had to relocate due to strong community backlash in Billinge, where the couple had lived. Judge David Stockdale noted that the destruction of the laptop caused additional grief for Ellen's family and her boyfriend, Ryan Warren. He said, "The loss of the laptop was more than just the loss of an item worth so many hundreds of pounds. It contained documents and photographs which record Ellen Higginbottom's life. Ellen Higginbottom's story reminds us of the light one person can bring and the darkness that can take it away. If this case moved you, hit that subscribe button, ring the bell, and join our community as we uncover more stories that matter. Share your thoughts in the comments. Until next time, stay safe, stay curious, and keep seeking the truth. Thank you for watching.